Welcome into episode 12 of Between the Pages. We're going to be discussing Tolkien's The Two Towers, which is my favorite installment of the trilogy. With me is, of course, Massamoon. Mass, you're going to have to speak up for me in particular, but maybe not for everybody. So, yeah, figure that out. Other than that, yeah, Mass, did you say hi?
I can say hi again.
Okay, good.
Everybody, how you doing?
Sorry, I wanted you to be able to say hi, and I also wanted to be able to see if I could hear you. Great. So, what I'm going to be doing today is I will be reading the synopsis that I found on SparkNotes of The Two Towers while integrating my own thoughts and notes. Mass is going to be interjecting his thoughts and notes, and if anyone has anything that they would like to interject, please type it up in the chat. Mass is going to be highlighting the most pertinent comments so I can address them during stream. Anything else will be addressed in my post-stream discussion, okay? So we will be beginning with The Two Towers synopsis that I found on SparkNotes. The Two Towers opens with the disintegration of the Fellowship, as Merry and Pippin are taken captive by orcs after the death of Boromir in battle. The orcs, having heard a prophecy that a hobbit will bear a ring that gives universal power to its owner, wrongly thinking that Merry and Pippin are the ring bearers. And now that I've read that like for the third or fourth time, I realize how wrong that is, and SparkNotes needs to be slapped. But I'm gonna go into my notes. So the Two Towers opens on Boromir's death. This is post-war with the orcs, well, battle with the orcs between the Fellowship and them for basically protecting all of the hobbits, not just Merry and Pippin, but Frodo and Sam, and Frodo and Sam's separation and escape from the rest of the Fellowship. This particular scene is indicative of the single book that Tolkien wrote being broken up into 3 different installments. I'm not sure what everyone knows about Tolkien and his publishing process, but he did originally try and publish the trilogy as one single book, but was refused by his publishers because they said, who would want to read such a large book? Me, for one. For two, I know Thorstenheim would. Mass, I don't think, is intimidated by a large book. So you would have had a bunch of nerds being able to read it and been just fine. This is my edition. This is my very proud original artwork edition. It's not a first edition, but it is the original artwork. And as you can see, it's actually quite thin. I'm putting all 3 of these together would not have intimidated me in the slightest. I have much bigger books, like The Count of Monte Cristo. But besides that, it is a gorgeous edition. I love this edition, even though that's the inappropriate spelling of edition. I hate that it was broken up, but I think the reason that I love The Two Towers more than any of the other ones was that it did introduce you to this very stark, very abrupt image of Boromir, one of our heroes from the previous book, dying on a battlefield. Like, there was blood everywhere. He was riddled with arrows, and Aragorn's like bawling his eyes out, big strong man that he is, and it was beautiful and it was horrible and it was incredible. So I think that among many other reasons, obviously, is is a reason that I like The Two Towers so much. And I wanted to ask if you enjoyed this particular tactic or strategy of storytelling over the gentle lulling that we experienced in the Fellowship. It took chapters, like literal chapters, to get out of the Shire in the Fellowship of the Rings. And in the Shire, life is slow and gentle and very comfortable, and The Two Towers, you get this, oh my god, this guy is bleeding to death right in front of me. And it's incredible to me. So, Mass, thoughts on the differences?
Uh, I mean, I liked it. It was. I like that it ended on a cliffhanger, like right when everything's starting to pick up, because it kind of leaves you wondering, like, all right, what the hell is about to happen? And with the Two Towers, it starts right back into it. Like, there's no filler, there's no sidetracking away from it, so it picks right back up, exactly where you wanted it to. So I think it was pretty well done. I think that was a good place to cut between books.
Good, good. I agree. I just thought it was, as I mentioned before, I've had a lot of people complain whenever I recommend a book to them. If they haven't gone through my rigorous questionnaire, they are like, I was just kind of thrown into a story and I really didn't like it because I didn't know what was going on, and it was really confusing. And for me, I'm just sitting there like, I don't need to know like what color her eyes were, what color her hair is, how old she is. I want to know what makes her special. I want to know why I care about her in particular. You know what I mean? And for this, it was just action. It was not this grandiose storytelling or description of a beautiful, comfortable life, which I did appreciate. Please do not mistake me. I did appreciate and still do appreciate every depiction that Tolkien has in his stories. I very much agree, Thorsenheim. So, continuing on, I did want to throw in a link here. And if you're viewing this on YouTube, the link will be in the comment section very shortly. But I'm going to throw this into chat so you guys can check it out at your own leisure. It is Boromir's Lament. It is actually the song that Tolkien wrote for the book, and I was going to read it, but that is an awfully long passage, and I love you guys. I love you guys a lot, but I don't feel like reading that right now. So please check out the link. It's a YouTube video that I very much love to listen to, and I think that you'll agree that it is a beautiful piece. All right, so continuing on with the synopsis, I actually wanted to yell at SparkNotes. Okay, so the orcs didn't hear a prophecy that a hobbit will bear a ring that gives universal power to its owner. That is not what happened at all in the book. What happened was they were ordered to find a hobbit that bore a ring and bring it unharmed to their master, which was supposed to be in Mordor, but what we find out later on is actually there are two separate legions of orcs or orcai that are looking for the hobbits that bear the ring. And those that bear the white hand of Saruman are supposed to bring the hobbits to Saruman because Saruman wants the Ring of Power. And in the movie, it's very misleading that, you know, Saruman's this like devout servant of Sauron, and that's just not the case. And so, yeah, I would like to yell at whoever wrote this synopsis at SparkNotes and probably like throw cold water in his face. Anyway, several other members of the Fellowship, including Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, resolve to pursue Merry and Pippin. They follow the hobbits' tracks through the fields and forest, always on the lookout for orcs. The group encounters the Riders of Rohan, led by Eomer. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin are being conveyed back to the orc headquarters when orcs from another tribe, the Uruk-hai, kidnap them in pursuit of the ring they believe the hobbits to be carrying. Pippin and Merry escape the orcs and travel through the forest near Entwash River, where an Ent, a giant tree-like creature, named Fangorn befriends them. This is also Treebeard, by the way. Fangorn offers the hobbits nourishment and conveys them to an Ent assembly. There, the Ents resolve to go to war against the orcs of Isengard, creatures controlled by the corrupted wizard Saruman, who have been cruel to them. Sorry, I'm reading chat. Meanwhile, Saruman hunts Aragorn and his group as they travel the forest. I think this might be an actual good segue into another note that I had about the Two Towers. And the note is during their capture, so before they escape to, well, just after they had escaped the Uruk-hai, Pippin thinks to himself, it's like an inner monologue, that he was a waste and he shouldn't have come and he was nothing but a burden to the Fellowship in the first place. Now, there are a lot of arguments out there, whether that is based solely on the cinematic revelation of Lord of the Rings or if it were based on both or just the books. A lot of people would like to argue that Pippin is the sole rescuer of Middle Earth because there were lots of events that he was the catalyst of. The first one being from the movie, Pippin dropped the skeleton down the well. And of course, those that have read the book, Mass pointed out earlier, he was just throwing rocks down the well. And he didn't realize that it would make reverberous sounds. But that was the first thing, because in either case, it awoke the Balrog from deep inside of Moria, and thus causing Gandalf to become Gandalf the White, removing himself as the gray wizard. I don't know why I almost said Jedi. I mean, I do know why, but I did almost say Jedi. Removing himself the title of Grey Wizard from the council and upholding the mantle of the White, which is the actual leader of the council, which Saruman basically voided when he became a spineless twit. That's the nicest thing I'm going to say about it. So, additionally, after the whole fiasco in Moria, Pippin was the reason that he and Merry got free from the first place. Pippin thought very quickly, and he made inferences that he and or Merry were actually Smeagol by making the noises that he had heard Gollum make in his throat, and it fooled all of these Uruk-hai into thinking that they could have been important. So instead of being murdered and eaten, they were taken along towards Isengard. They obviously didn't know they were going towards Isengard, but they were. Therefore, leading into yet another argument that Pippin saved Middle-earth, Pippin actually was the reason that the Ents were roused in the first place to rise up and wage war against Isengard. Merry obviously was a big part of Pippin's, not plans, but Pippin's oh, thank you so much for the new follow. Appreciate that. Merry was obviously there for that, but it was Pippin who thought very quickly and emphatically. He brought on so much energy from creatures, Ents, that were never hasty. They never took quick action against anything. And while the Entmoot lasted for, I want to say like a week, almost a week, that was a very quick decision that they made, because Pippin was like, we have to go. We have to do something. Look at all these trees that are dying at the hands of Saruman and at the axes of the Uruk-hai and the orcs. So that's yet another argument to be had that Pippin saved Middle-earth. But the last one that is seen in the Two Towers is that Pippin actually openly resisted Sauron, and Gandalf commended him and admitted to him that he, with all of his mighty powers, would not have been able to resist Sauron. Now, whether that's because hobbits are naturally simple and have no like great ambitions to be anything more powerful than they are, that's an argument for another day. But Pippin revealed what the artifact was in truth without giving Sauron open ideas of what was going on and the battle to come. So that's what I have to say about what I don't think that Pippin was the sole catalyst for Middle Earth being saved and the war being won. But I do have to say that he and I think it's also something that Tolkien wanted people to understand is that even if you aren't the hero in the story, the day could be won because you were there. There's nobody that's too small to do something that impacts people on a larger scale. And that's all I have to say about that. Mass, I think you had something you wanted to say about it.
Yes. I mean, a lot of it's along the same line as what you were just saying. I think that Pippin wasn't the sole catalyst for like any necessarily one thing. Like it was always kind of a series of events that led up to, you know, specific circumstances. Um, I think him grabbing the Palantir, like his curiosity getting better of him, set in motion a chain of events that was a good thing. Because had he not done that, Gandalf wouldn't have taken him to Gondor, and if he hadn't gone to Gondor, he wouldn't have become a steward to Denethor. He wouldn't have saved Faramir's life, which obviously was kind of a pivotal thing within the story. As far as like with the ents, I like how Tolkien kind of portrayed him and like, yeah, he messes up a lot, like, you know, in Hobbit years, he's just a teenager. He messes up a lot, but he had kind of a weird, like, energetic charisma to him, where he was able to kind of motivate people when they weren't necessarily going to do so themselves. So I think that without Pippin, things would have either failed or have gone worse than it actually had. But I think that same argument could be, well, opinion could be used for really all the different hobbits. Like they all played their own pivotal role that led to the success of the Fellowship. So.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Sorry, everybody. I was looking off into chat, and no, Lisa, who wasn't calling Hobbit simple. I was talking more of what Matt said. They take simpler pleasures in life, like second breakfast. So, you know, maybe I'm actually a Hobbit. But no, I think what you said about Bilbo having aspirations is something that can be said upon how after so many years of him having it for what, half a century, he did feel corrupted and he started being tainted and he became a little less like a hobbit and more like all of the creatures that became corrupted. So I think that that's something that can be said about it. And whether or not Bilbo was more corrupted by it than Frodo, and their, I don't want to say involvement, but their exposure to it, because Bilbo used it like a handful of times over the course of the 50 years that he had it, and Frodo used it a handful of times within the like few months that he had it. Well, he technically had it a lot longer than that, but he didn't actually mess with it until the year he left for the war.
To be fair, with Bilbo, I think his took blood and Gandalf's influence were probably just as much of a corrupting factor as the ring.
I mean, you're not wrong. Not even a little bit. Not even at all. I mean, you have to think about the history, his family, and specifically the Took lineage, they were odd hobbits and ostracized. And even the Brandybucks, Mary's family, they were ostracized for being odd because they had a little more adventurous aspirations than just having second breakfast every day.
I think they were the only ones that could actively swim, weren't they?
They were the only ones that for sure could swim. They were the only ones that were adventurous enough to try it. Hello, Innisfire. I would like to say hi to you. But besides that, that's just another reason that the hobbits, while obviously Frodo is the hero of the story, Aragorn, being the man, is a hero of the story, and Gandalf, being the wizard, is a hero of the story. I always like to argue that Sam was stronger than Frodo because Sam put on the ring and you don't see corruption in him. And that's just, obviously a personal opinion of it, that I have a few pieces of evidence to say that, but at the same time, Sam was just so pure in his love and devotion to his master and carrying out his master's wish, which was obviously to destroy the ring. But we're getting ahead of ourselves in the synopsis, guys. I am the worst at this. We could go on and on. I swear I could. So, Mass, if you don't have anything else to say, I'm going to continue with the synopsis.
No, we're good.
Okay.
Well, actually, I would like to point out, Thorstenheim, I absolutely agree.
We all need a Sam in our life. Meanwhile, Merry and Pippin are being conveyed back to Orc headquarters when orcs from... Okay, so we already did that. Meanwhile, Saruman haunts Aragorn and his group as they travel the forest. Gandalf then appears to them, reborn after his earlier death in the Fellowship of the Ring. As Gandalf the White, also known as the White Rider, Gandalf guides Aragorn's group to Edoras, the Golden Hall of King Theoden. There, Gandalf exposes Theoden's counselor, Wormtongue. Who the fuck trusts somebody named Wormtongue? As a spy for the evil Saruman. Gandalf also facilitates a reunion between Theoden and Éomer. The group then proceeds to confront Saruman at Isengard, where they are surprised to find Merry and Pippin at the gates of Saruman's headquarters. The hobbits tell Gandalf that the Ents wish to meet with him to offer their aid in the struggle against Saruman. The group finds Wormtongue in Saruman's tower. Wormtongue tries to kill Gandalf by throwing an object down on him from a window. That object is... I actually cannot pronounce... Palantir. I'm going to say Palantir. If you guys have a phonetics pronunciation of that, I'd appreciate it.
Pretty sure it's
anyway,
Palantir.
a magic... I'm sorry?
I'm pretty sure it is Palantir.
It's my best guess at Danish. A magic seeing stone that transmits images. Pippin looks into the Palantir, which allows the Dark Lord Sauron to discover where Pippin is and pursue him. Yeah, actually, it wasn't clear, and it's said in the book who Wormtongue was actually throwing the Palantir at. He might have been throwing it at Gandalf to kill him, or he might have been throwing it at Saruman, because he was pissed off at Saruman. But the second half of the Two Towers rejoins Frodo and Sam just after they separate from the rest of the Fellowship and begin making their way to Mordor to destroy the ring. As they travel, they meet the creature Gollum, whom they tame and force to be their guide to Mordor. Sam and Frodo are wary of Gollum. They know he owned the ring before and wishes to regain it, but they desperately need someone to direct them to their destination. Frodo, Sam, and Gollum journey through a smelly marshland in which they can see the faces of slain warriors haunting the waters. They travel by night as Gollum cannot stand the sun, so they are cold and hungry most of the time. They finish and finally reach the Black Gate of the realm of Mordor and see Sauron's dark tower rising overhead. The gate is well guarded, and the hobbits wonder how they will be able to get inside. Gollum directs them to the different hidden path to Mordor, where the guards will likely be sparser. On the way back, the hobbits are frightened by dark shapes flying overhead, the Nazgul, the Black Riders of Sauron, who are searching for the ring. Along the way, Frodo meets a band of men led by Faramir, the younger brother of Boromir. The men are suspicious of the hobbits at first, believing they are responsible for Boromir's death. Frodo avoids telling Faramir that his brother betrayed the Fellowship by attempting to seize the ring for himself, but Sam blurts it out. Faramir is shocked but grateful to learn the truth, so he offers support to the hobbits' journey. Faramir's men nearly kill Gollum, who is caught as an intruder, but Frodo intercedes to save the creature. Like, I really just want to point out, and they don't play this up enough, they actually downplay it a lot in the cinematic feature. Faramir, obviously, it's also upplayed that he is the least favorite son. But Faramir exercises such great control and compassion for a greater purpose other than himself and other than him and his glory in his father's eyes over what Boromir, who was the favored son, was able to do. And whether or not that was the exposure to the ring, who's to say, obviously. But man, you always feel bad for Faramir, or at least I do. I always feel bad for him. People should love him more, and not just that crazy woman. Going on. Gollum leads Frodo and Sam up the mountain called Cirith Ungol, and into tunnels inhabited by Shelob, a giant deadly female spider. Shelob paralyzes Frodo with her sting, but Sam kills the spider. Frodo and Sam are separated. However, as orc guards find Frodo and proceed to take him off to their headquarters where they plan to search him for the ring, Sam believes Frodo to be dead, so he accepts the responsibility of carrying the ring by himself. Surrounded by orcs, the terrified Sam dons the ring and finds that it enables him to understand the orc language. Sam follows the guards who carry off the paralyzed Frodo. Upon hearing them mention that Shelob only devours living creatures, Sam is shocked to realize that his friend is alive. He chastises himself for taking the ring for himself, unaware that he actually saved the ring and kept it from Sauron by taking it from Frodo. Sam realizes that Frodo is still alive at the very moment when the guards enter Mordor, slamming the gates in Sam's face. As the Two Towers ends, Sam is anguished by the thought that he and Frodo are separated. So again, we have a very action-packed beginning and an action-packed ending to the Two Towers, which may or may not be the reasons why I love this book so much more than I love the other ones. Not saying I don't love the other ones, obviously. But I did want to point out, and I can't believe it spaced on me, I wanted to point out that before they could enter Fangorn Forest properly, Legolas actually had to speak with Treebeard, aka Fangorn, and tell him that Gimli, the dwarf who wielded an axe, was no friend to the orcs, and his axe was not for cutting down trees, but cutting down orcs. So much so that he emphasized that during battle, Gimli's axe slain 42 orcs. And nerd as I am, and despite my not displeasure, but dislike of the Hitchhiker's Guide, I just thought it was very interesting that it happened to be 42 orcs that were slain by Gimli's axe. And that just may be the answer to life. Mouse, did you have any more comments, concerns, interesting tidbits? Nope. You got nothing? Nothing, really?
I will say, if there was one gripe I had between the difference of the books and the movies, is in the books, Gimli is like a beast. He cuts down orcs left and right. It's like he dominates the battlefield. Whereas in the movies, it's kind of the opposite. Like it portrays Legolas as being like, "Watch me slay all this stuff," and Gimli's gonna make a couple of quirky quotes, and for every two that I cut down, Legolas is gonna cut down like 20. So I wish they had portrayed Gimli's battle prowess a little bit better in that regard.
No, I totally
Because
get it, and I believe you.
I like to think that him and Legolas were very much equals on the battlefield. And to be fair, nothing quite tops the moment of, throwing a dwarf into battle.
Factual statement. I'm just trying to catch up in chat. Mass, do you see any comments that I need to address here on stream before we go into post discussion?
Joe asked why Legolas would need to explain that to Treebeard.
Oh, well, I think Thorstenheim at least addressed part of it by saying that he didn't speak tree, which is true, he didn't, but also Treebeard wasn't going to trust anyone that wielded an axe because his only real experience with axe wielders were orcs, and orcs had no respect for trees, and Treebeard, as peaceable as he is, as an ent and as an elder being, is also terrible and ferocious as any active nature could be. So he didn't want Gimli to come into the forest and cut down any trees, and he would have killed him if Legolas hadn't spoken up for him. And it says a lot, actually. It says a whole lot for Legolas to speak up and vouch for a dwarf, Gimli. Because, as we know, there's been eons of fight and war well, not all-out war, but animosity between the dwarves and the elves. Even though at one time, and as we had discussed in the Fellowship, at one time, elves and dwarves were Milan. They were friends. And that is why in Moria, there was the gate that came from the land of the elves that you could only open by speaking the elvish word for friend. So nobody tosses a dwarf. There is that. Don't tell the elf.